Hey guys, I'm Jonathan Fields. This is Good Life Project. My guests today are Elizabeth Cutler and Julie Rice, the founders of an incredible, I even hesitate to call it a fitness experience, but a lifestyle experience called SoulCycle in New York City and soon taking over the entire country. So really excited to have a conversation about how this whole thing came to life. Welcome guys, great to be here with you.
Thanks for having us.
So I want to kind of go back in time because right now we're in New York City. We're in one of your signature studios, amazing environment. And you've got 9 locations now, right? So thriving, always a wait list to get into everything, amazing what you've created. And you would think that this is something that's been going on for 10, 15 years to build to that place. How long has this actually been alive for?
Elizabeth and I, we were actually introduced about 7 years ago when we decided to start SoulCycle. So we've been in business for a little over 6 years. When we first decided we were going to start a business, we really had plans to have one studio, and we were both sort of looking for a great cardio.
Or maybe 3, but it really wasn't that. It wasn't 9, and it certainly wasn't way more.
Somewhere between 1 and 3.
I mean, neither of us had ever done anything like this before, and
right.
so.
What were you doing? What were you both doing before that?
I was working in Hollywood in the movie business. I was representing actors, and
she had the sexy part of the business. I sold real estate in Colorado and Telluride. I lived there for a long time, and I also practiced something called Jinshin Jitsu, which is like the grandparent of acupuncture, so it's one of the healing arts.
So,
and I had a practice here in New York after I moved from Telluride.
All right, so you both basically came from Hollywood, you came from Boulder. Radically different cultures and lifestyles, by the way. And you come together. How did you guys actually connect?
Well, interestingly enough, although the cultures are radically different, the one thing that they did have in common is they're both really lifestyle cultures. And each of them really treats exercise and physical movement and sort of de-stressing with the same kind of respect and importance. And so I think for each of us, we came to New York. We were looking for some sort of an exercise experience that was more than just physical, that gave us the physical results we were looking for, but was also enjoyable.
And really something that
Wait,
you could do.
Are you saying the average gym is not just totally enjoyable?
Listen, New Yorkers are so type A, right? So exercise begins to, become something that is on the to-do list, Got my groceries, check, went to work, check, got my workout in, check, So I think that each of us had come from, from cities and places where, for me, in Los Angeles, I would go hiking with my girlfriends instead of grabbing a cocktail. And I know Elizabeth had a really similar kind of thing going on.
Right.
And so to all of a sudden put exercise in this category of sort of got to get it done and over with to burn the calories it just seemed like such a waste, of really the only personal time you were going to give yourself in a day. And so we were introduced, and we had a similar vision of.
Like immediately, it was actually, we always joke, it's like the best blind date we ever went on.
So what was? But taking back to what was the vision? Like coming out of the gate, what you're thinking? We're going to create what and why?
I mean, we sat at lunch and Julie was saying, like, I feel like it could be more spiritual. I feel like we could ride in candlelight. I feel like if you had, the whole branded elements. I mean, the whole thing from the beginning, I feel like it's like one of those things where somebody tells you the truth and it just like, it's clear as a bell. That's kind of like what the lunch was like. We really just started talking. And once,
Well, it's interesting because then Elizabeth said, and New Yorkers want to do everything quickly. So we would have to figure out a way to give them a really efficient workout in 45 minutes, something where they could hit their whole body, they could get their cardio, but they could get more than that. So we had sort of a real bantering about, what the physical experience would be like, and then sort of what the overarching experience would be like, and it was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and then the conversation just continued. I mean, listen, we always say like somebody somewhere like really wanted SoulCycle to be born, and we continued like every obstacle, like there's an answer, and and we're very hard workers and we really look for solutions. So that's obviously part of it. But I do think like sometimes you just get, hard work lines up with luck. And I think, in some cases that's really been the case for us. And so, as Julie always says, she's like, I went back to my office and started researching towels, and I got on Craigslist because no brokers would call us back because it was the height of the market in New York.
Did you guys leave that conversation like saying, okay, we have a plan, let's go do our separate thing, or you were just both so jazzed that you were just kind of like
we
doing
really
it?
did. I mean, I always say I can't really remember where that lunch ended and sort of the actual tasks began, but I just remember leaving that lunch with like a to-do list. It wasn't even are we gonna do this? It was kind of like, okay, you hit the towels, I'm gonna start looking for space, we'll regroup tomorrow. It's exactly what we did.
That's true.
So did you literally come back together the next day?
We did. I mean, Elizabeth found she found a space on Craigslist, and again, to her point, it was an old dance studio. We were able to sublet it for 5 years, so the risk didn't feel,
right,
like it was going to choke us,
Right.
And we got back together, maybe it was 2 days later, and I actually had done some research on the towels, and we got back together in the space. I mean, the next time we saw each other, it was Elizabeth, and a broker and I sort of visiting the space that would become the first SoulCycle.
Right.
And with like a little plan on the back of a napkin, like what do we put the wall here, and then, where would we put the signage? They ended up having no signage. I mean,
had you guys opened a business before?
Neither of us had ever opened a business, although I will say that what we were each doing prior to opening SoulCycle was somewhat entrepreneurial. I mean, in my business in Hollywood, I did, handle a roster of clients, and, as a manager for them, what I did was I built mini businesses out of each of them. So that sort of was what I did, and
and in the real estate business, you have to be self-motivated. I mean, you get paid by the work that you make. So I sort of, ran my own business in there, but we never had, a lot of employees, and we never had some of the issues that come along with running like a larger, organization. And, and then I had a healing practice, so I did that as well. But so I'd always sort of been, responsible for my own livelihood, but not to the extent that we are now.
Right, and I want to get into like what you guys have built and sort of how, but before we do it, let's zoom the lens out a little bit. And tell me a little bit about what's going on in your bigger lives at this point.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, sort of from that germ of an idea. I mean, it seems that the world really wanted, what, we were about to and continue to, give it. And so, now, I mean, we are really looking at, bringing this to the world. It's funny every time. It doesn't seem like there is a city out there that would not respond to, moving your body to positive messages in candlelight, looking and feeling better from it, coming out, having made friends, commonalities with the community, increased, the potential of your heart. And so it seems like, right now it seems like we are getting ready to build 60 of them to start. So by end of 2014, we think that we'll have 60 SoulCycles.
Wow.
On both coasts and beyond. And then there seems like there's a whole soul lifestyle that goes along with it,
because that's it's a fascination. So SoulCycle is essentially within the studio itself. It's this form of sort of like deeply spiritual movement and breath all connected together, and motivation, inspiration, aspiration. But you built something that goes so far beyond what just happens in this room. I mean, you built a pretty astonishing brand, and people who are so loyal to you, it's like it's almost cultish.
I mean, I think that when you come into a room that's safe, and we try to like create an environment where people can just really like be by themselves on the bike and yet be part of something else at the same time. So there's almost like an oxymoron going on, and you're working so hard, and the endorphins are kicking, and the music is incredible, and the instructor is saying something that like gets you, that you just, for me, it's like I always say, like, you come for your body and you stay for your head, and it's really the head game that like cleans up the rest of your life. So to me, it's just like, how do I get through my own obstacles? Like, if I get through them on the bike, and then I can go out into my life and just, operate like on a higher plane in a way that's like more productive, that makes me more connected to like really how I want to live my life. I mean, that's really, to me, that's like super valuable and very powerful. So I don't know if that's like where the cultish part comes into it, but I think that when people find something that they value like that really touches them on a lot of different levels, I think that's where like the commitment really comes to it. And I think it's unique for fitness in the sense, like Julie was talking about. I mean, when you feel like it's something on your to-do list, you do it because it's on your to-do list, but if it becomes something that you look forward to because it's a game changer for you, I mean, that elevates something into just a different realm that, you know, really has such an impact on both on your life, but also can have an impact on the lives around you. So it's like wild that could happen in a 45-minute class. And I think that, you know, in that way, even though I think from the beginning we really had hoped that ultimately it would become that, but in that way I do feel like it has both hit our expectations, but also exceeded our expectations.
So, I mean, you built something which is extraordinary. Like you said, you know, it is kind of amazing to think that 45 minutes in a room doing something, you know, with up to 60 other people, you could leave and it's not just a workout, you're not just sweating, but you feel like a changed person. Like you come in state A and state B, and you've created this culture which is so much bigger, this brand, this sort of ethic which goes beyond. And as we sit here, you know, I'm looking at one wall here, and there's this incredible creed, you know, just sort of scrawled across the wall, which speaks to the fact that everything that happens here goes so much beyond what happens on the bike. Where does this come from, and how intentional, you know, like is this something that like came out from the very beginning, like we have to have this philosophy, or did it just like drop from the sky years later?
You know, I think we always have had that philosophy. I think that as we got into the business a couple of years, we began to understand how to articulate the philosophy in a way that we could sort of impart it onto others. I mean, the interesting thing about SoulCycle is, you know, it's such a living, breathing organism, all of it. You know, we always say, you know, all of the studios are moving to the same beat, and all of the instructors are using the same vocabulary. And, you know, I find that, you know, wherever, if you're riding on East 83rd Street or in California, it's like you can sort of understand that the same messages and themes of positivity and empowerment are running throughout the studios. I think for us, as we have, built the business, I think that the voice of SoulCycle has become really clear for us. I think that there are certain messages that are very powerful and that are definitely delivered intentionally, both on the walls and in the language that people use when they're on bikes, and, in the clothing that we wear around afterward. I think that there's a real language that we like to empower our riders with.
Right. Coming out of the world of entertainment in Hollywood, because there's a certain amount of theater.
There's a lot of
within a classroom
yeah.
too. So is that something that you sort of like intentionally brought?
Definitely. I mean, it seems, you have 140 eyeballs, 70 bikes glued on something in front of you. I mean, it's a performance, no doubt about it. People, especially today, people are so used to a world with so much sensation and media. There is definitely theatrics going on up there at all times. I think all of our instructors bring a different kind of flair to it, but there's no doubt that we view this as, mostly fitness and some performance art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Flair is a perfect word.
Yeah, flair.
Which is an interesting thing, right? Because so let's kind of like talk more about your experience in growing a business. The initial goal, just a huge personal connection, like your similar vision, you want something similar. Also for you on a personal level, you're looking for there's a need. You both guys, you moved from somewhere else into New York City. Were you both married with kids at that time?
Yeah.
We both had 5-month-old babies, and Elizabeth had an older daughter, so we have one child that's the exact same age.
Because it feels like the format of the business is also really tapped into the needs of moms in New York City. Was that intentional, or was that just like that's what you want?
Well, it's funny. I mean, it definitely started that way. Whenever somebody comes up to one of us and gives us a compliment, oh, it's so perfect, it's exactly right, whatever, we always say, yeah, because we made it for us.
Right.
It's exactly what we wanted. But the truth is that, like anything, I definitely do think that in the beginning, we did create it as something that we were two busy moms that needed to get it all in 45 minutes. We were both looking to get, our bodies back after having babies. And I think we very much did design it at first to us. But, what has seemed to evolve over the 6 years that we've been in business is that, as our riders have gotten really skilled at our workout, the workouts have, evolved and gotten, harder. And all of a sudden the women that
dynamic.
found it brought their husbands and boyfriends and brothers
Yeah,
and kids. And so, at this point it is definitely, it really, goes sort
total
of
mix of
total mix,
male,
yeah.
female. So,
which is great. I mean, it's very interesting. It's like when we look at 72nd Street, which is where we started our first studio, which was in a former dance studio that had also been like, what was it? It was a funeral home.
wait a minute, you started your first location in a former funeral home?
Yes, which
with
of course we didn't know until later.
In the rear lobby.
Yeah, no sign. I mean, the whole thing was hilarious.
Were you in there sort of just saging it for weeks before?
Yeah, we did a lot of staging, but we had no idea that we found out about the funeral home later. But the space was actually much more dance studio, and it felt really good. But I think because it was sort of like in the rear lobby and a little bit hard to find, we had so much gratitude for every single person who walked through that door.
Yeah.
And when they connected with it, and then just like you said, like they would bring husbands and people would bring friends, they would bring relatives, they would, bring the community there. And so it became a very community-based sort of organism that then ended up sort of drawing, much further afield in Manhattan. But I think, like, Julie always says, she's like, each one of the SoulCycles, we want people to feel like is their neighborhood SoulCycle, and we work to really try to have that, remain intact. And so to that end, I think it's kind of cool because people do like make new friends, and they, get to meet people in their neighborhood, and they sort of connect with something that feels local and yet is part of something a little bit larger. So.
Right, yeah.
You kind of go around the world to find, to figure out that your best practices came from the obstacles that were put in front of you.
Right.
I mean, if you, ask any small business owner in New York City, I mean, really what has ever helped them the most, and it's probably the density of New York City. I mean, if you have a decent business and you put it on an avenue in New York City, just the amount of people that will walk by, the odds are if what you're doing inside that little room that you have is decent,
serving someone,
you're going to be okay. So for us, when we signed our first lease and then we realized that we weren't actually even going to have a sign, it wasn't a storefront, and we weren't going to have a sign, all of a sudden it sort of became, well, how are we going to get people to even find us in the back of this lobby? And so exactly what Elizabeth said is correct. I mean, everybody that did find us, it was like we had to make sure they stayed because the chances of another person finding us to replace them on that bike was not good. So it really was. I mean, every customer mattered. Every single customer mattered. And I think that as we get bigger and as we train people, and it used to be us at the front desk every day. I mean, for years, and so I think that as we train our new front desk employees and stuff, it's like that is really the philosophy of the company. It's like every person that comes here really matters because you really remember what it was like when you would say, "Oh my God, do you remember Sarah who rode yesterday? Where is she today?" Mm-hmm. It was so. And
I think that's one of the beauties of a smaller, sort of like really community-based solution or experience in the fitness and in the lifestyle world, is that you've got this opportunity to build community, like a really, really deep sense of community. It just gets much harder and harder to do as sort of facilities and solutions and experience get bigger and bigger and bigger. So you guys seem to have sort of really tapped into that. You also did something fascinating. Which is completely counter to sort of like what everybody else in the fitness world does purely on a business level, which is the way that you price your services. So most people would tell you coming out of the gate like this, get everyone into membership plans, lock them into long-term things so they don't have to think about it, and that we just automatically hit their credit cards every month. You went the exact opposite way, which is you said basically, no, we want people to sort of like consciously know, like pay per class or, sort of short-term commitment, which raises the bar for you guys to deliver something extraordinary every time, because you can't rely on people just automatically getting renewed. Talk to me about how that happened and why.
We spent like the first year of the business explaining why, creating a market. People would call and say, not even why should I pay X? Why should I even pay for something that is free down the street at a gym? And so once we got people in the door to try it, they really understood the difference, and they could see how we could focus all of our talent on our profit center, which in a gym model is obviously a profit loss center because people aren't, it's part of the package.
Right.
So if we could really put all our resources into delivering something that was where we extraordinary, we feel, and something where we, the bar is fairly high. We have to bring it every time somebody comes. Otherwise, there's no incentive for them to ever come back. And I think that, for us, in terms of pricing, we also felt like if you pay for it, you will value it. And if you value it, you will bring it. And if you bring it, then the rest of the people in the room will feel it, and everything will feed off each other, and everybody will be in it together. And there's a certain amount of power in that. And I think that part of creating the model in that way, I think, is sort of intrinsic to the philosophy that ended up that we were really sort of wanting to do, where it's like you choose it. And you choose it because you value it, and
which is just, it's so contrary to the way that the entire rest of the fitness world operates. So it's kind of fascinating.
Well, it really is funny. I mean, when people say to us, you know, what was the most difficult thing that you had to, you know, do or overcome, or you know, how did you tell people to come? It really wasn't, you know, once people tried what we were offering, they loved it. It was really just about creating that marketplace to put our own product into.
That's right.
You know, the creation of the marketplace was actually harder than the creation of the business. And I think it was just sort of the education of you know, the 400 people we needed to get this thing going.
Right, that original spot.
But it's funny, you know, it actually continues. You know, what's interesting is that, you know, when you think about it, you know, 6 years down the line, I mean, it continues to challenge us every day, right? Because the rider that came in year one, you know, to our first base on 72nd Street, I mean, what we offered that day is actually not good enough for them today, right? So 6 years later, it's like we have to continue to evolve, and we have to continue to train our teachers even better, and we have to continue to change the workout in a way that is familiar but is still challenging and new. And so it's funny because you'd think, okay, got the customer, whatever, but by designing a model like that, you continue to challenge yourself. And I think
you still have to make it accessible to the person who just found you last
That's
Tuesday.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. But it's funny, I mean, we really, also sort of contrary to what goes on, I think, in a lot of the fitness business, I mean, we see really great retention around here. And I think that also has to do with the fact that we are continuously challenged by the fact that somebody is not definitely coming back tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, and I love that about, you know, on the one hand, as the business owners, as the visionaries, you know, it puts immense pressure on you guys to just constantly be raising the bar. But on the other hand, from what the experiences that you create for the people you're serving, your community, are extraordinary.
I mean, it's amazing, you know, I have to say, you know, there are a lot of things that we're extremely proud of, and one of them is, I mean, this is like really, it sounds crazy, but it's like a creative hotbed for fitness. You know, the people around here are just, you know, the cast of characters that are just consistently, you know, bringing the creativity to our entire internal community. It's amazing, you know, we sit in our offices all day, and, you know, we have all of these amazing, vibrant people that are exchanging ideas and music, and this is what I'm going to do. One of our instructors is actually doing a Moulin Rouge ride out in the Hamptons this summer, where we're going to, in the middle of the night, out in Bridgehampton, we're going to reenact the entire performance on bikes with people, you know, dancing.
So it's performance art.
It's performance art. I mean, and we do things like that around here all the time, you know, whether it's to one particular artist and we do an entire ride to that, or, you know, having dancers come into the room. But I do think it's challenging. It's challenging, but it's really, I keep saying, I think of it like, you know, I think of our, you know, the people who create the workouts around here. It's almost like they're running a relay race, and I just feel like one person is handing a baton to the next, and they're raising the bar a little bit, and then they're running to the next. And I feel like at the end of a morning here, by the time the stereo has been turned on at 6 a.m. and turned off at, you know, by lunchtime, it's like you have just seen it just continue the creativity and sort of grow and grow. And it's inspiring, I have to say. It keeps us inspired.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that has been, I mean, also the interesting part on that side in terms of internally is when you start out with 2 people and a front desk person, and then we grow. I think we have a couple hundred employees at this point, and our objective is for people to like wake up in the morning and be psyched to go to work, you know, because we just feel like if people feel that kind of like pleasure with their work, then the people who ride here will pick up on that energy, and you know, it sort of fosters and through the whole community. I mean, that is like fun that you get to like be the steward of that. It's like humbling, it's exciting, we're grateful, we're working hard, but we're having a good time. I mean, it's like, that is a piece that we never thought that we would really have the privilege to, you know, be able to develop that platform to do it and work with so many incredibly talented people whose, you know, vision is because they want to bring soul to the people. So
right.
It's been really fun for us.
So, which kind of like brings up then, you know, the other question, which is now gone from, in 6 years, you went from a dream and a napkin to 9, like tremendous locations and a pretty serious business. And like you just shared earlier, your goal is to now go from there to 60 locations in how long?
3.5 years.
So you've got a couple hundred employees now. So you went from like 2 employees to a few hundred. And culture is such a critical, it's like the core of what you're about. How do you guys sort of explore, how do we keep this culture and go from 1 to 9, and that's a huge challenge right away, like 2 to 200 or whatever it is, big challenge. But then like a couple hundred to 60 locations, how do you explore that? How do you make it happen and not lose the essence of who you are and what it's all about?
I mean, I think we want to keep it kind of tribal, and we want to keep it like fun, and try to keep people connected where they feel like they can make a difference and that they can move the needle in what they're working on, and really provide an environment where there's good communication, and the systems that we set up when we do are good, well thought out, not laborious, but streamlined things that can be scaled. And we're always thinking about how we scale the business, what kind of impact the decisions that we make today will have on tomorrow, and just try to be thoughtful and fix the stuff that breaks along the way.
And I also think what Elizabeth touched on before is like really the way that we think about it. I mean, we really are sort of like, thinking globally but acting locally. So, each one that we build, it's not a SoulCycle, it's the SoulCycle, and so realistically, with each one of them, we build a community. We have a really amazing training program now for our instructors, and so, every 12 weeks we're turning out, another bunch of sort of creative and inspiring instructors. They go through a really rigorous program that starts with auditions and ends with them doing 5 free rides for the community, where our riders get to sort of get feedback on them and let us know if they feel like they're ready for the schedule.
Right.
And then they as Elizabeth said, it's very tribal. Then that group will move on and begin to, they have formed community while they're in their training group. So then they sort of move on a little bit as a unit. Right now, it's this community that is trained together, so they can sort of spread those good vibes into whatever new town, city we're building. And I think that by sort of continuing to make it feel really personal, it does not feel too big yet.
No, not yet. Yeah. But I think you were one of the first people who actually sort of like brought that sort of concept to our minds. Right. It was just like how to keep things like in tribes and like tribal.
It's Dunbar's number, the 150.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like you hit it and then everything starts to change unless you work really deliberately to set
Absolutely,
yeah.
Which is something that we are really working.
So then let's talk about.
It's not perfect.
And it never is.
It's not perfect.
But I think that's one of the big learnings for every entrepreneur is like there's no there. It's just it's constant adaptation. You grow, you evolve on a personal level, the business grows and evolves, and the market evolves. And so it's just constantly, okay, how do we make it all align so that everything is still working?
And you always have your original customers that do think it got too big,
yeah.
or your original employee that didn't get to interface with you as much as they did a week before. But you kind of you do the best you can to be aware of that stuff. So
last year you guys also, there was a big shift. You took on an outside partner in the company. Talk to me a little bit about what happened around there and why. What was it that made you think, okay, this is something that would be really good for us now?
It was really interesting. I mean, we started a business without an exit strategy. And so we happened to just be in the fortunate position, I think, having popularity in New York City is obviously helpful, but we were getting a lot of incoming calls from PE firms and just sort of interested parties. And then a good friend of ours introduced us to the CEO of Equinox, and we had dinner with him. And I got to give it to him. I mean, he was not feeling well that night, but he made sure that he came to the dinner. It was just like he was going to start the relationship off right, which I think we both really respected. And it just seemed to be like the longer, like when you get to know people, you start to feel like there's the right fit. And people always asked us, like, who's your competition? And as we grew, we felt like we created the marketplace, so we didn't really look at it from competition. And of course, like things do tend to, once you're successful in a space, people tend to start competing with you. But even people who did the same thing as we do, we didn't really consider to be our competition, because we just feel like what we've created is very different. And of course we think it's best in class, but that's just us. Yeah. But I think that when we went to go look at like operators and who could help us really operate and scale, when we looked at best in class in terms of who's doing what in fitness, I mean, obviously that's the brand in the United States that was, going to add the most value.
Right, sure.
For us being able to, scale and have access to just the operational and know-how, and it's pretty awesome when you're two people that are starting something and you've been looking at each other, in the eyes for 5 years, and it's been incredible, to have somebody that you can call when both of you aren't exactly sure what the answer is. I mean, I think that there's, and they may not have the answer, but it's still somebody who's got the experience and has, seen a lot. And I think, for us, it just made a lot of sense.
I think we also saw the potential of, we really began to understand that this thing had the legs to be 60 or 100 SoulCycles, and giving birth to them one at a time, you see what goes into each of them, and I think we just began to realize that to sort of hit critical mass with speed, that a partnership, especially a strategic one where we could sort of lean on the resources of a larger company that had similar experiences, really made sense for us.
So, which makes perfect sense from a business standpoint, and then if we kind of like pull out and say, okay, from a lifestyle standpoint, you guys have full lives outside of the business, like you have families. But any startup business, requires an insane amount of time and effort. So you're 5 years in, and are you thinking to yourself also, okay, how long do we go at this pace, and how would this sort of like allow us to shift our lifestyles outside of SoulCycle?
This has not shifted our lifestyles outside of SoulCycle. I mean, it's shifted our lifestyles differently. I mean, we don't work less, we just work differently. We're sort of, now it's kind of like we have two jobs. It's like we really do split our time between, trying to, work on what's going on now, and then, strategic plan for 2 and 3 years ahead of now. So
it's micro macro for sure.
Yeah, it's micro macro, and I would say that micro macro actually takes 2 days in each for every 1 day that you have. There's actually 2 real business days that need to be compiled into one. It's interesting. I think that we both have worked so hard for the last 6 years, but the truth is, it really has been a labor of love, and fortunately or unfortunately, the opportunities that we are continuing to be presented with on a daily basis are so exciting that we're just two of those people that like to get up and go to work in the morning.
Just kind of keep it going. And the thing is, I think, with children, I always joke, Julie's daughter Phoebe is going to run operations. Yeah. She understands the inner workings of the business, and we did a ride last week where just one of our instructors happened to be in one of our Long Island studios, and he did 4 songs for me and my 2 girls who are not quite old enough to ride in the studio, but in a contained environment for 4 songs. Yeah. And to me, I have to say, seeing them ride in the studio for the first time as children who grew up inside of this business, it was very moving to me. My 7-year-old was like, "You are crying," and I was like, "You are right." But just because I could see, first of all, how just the experience in the workout has changed my own life, just even as a user, and then just to see the generations of kids coming up. Everybody relates to music, and I don't think that will really ever change. And so for these kids to be able to access, physicality in a different way, for me, just personally, it just felt very fulfilling, and we just feel grateful for the platform. So, we'll keep putting one foot in front of the other, and hopefully, our friends and family hang in there with us.
So I love that, and it's amazing to, as I talk to different people, and I look at my experience in entrepreneurship. It's always fascinating to me to see how people who are, late in life enough so that they have families, whether they're like dads, moms, and kids, and how everybody integrates that differently. So it's kind of fun to see how you guys have done it. One last question for both of you. The name of this project is Good Life Project. In your minds, when you think about it, with the phrase "good life," what does it mean to each of you to live a good life?
You first or me first? I'm thinking about it.
I mean, to me, for me personally, it's feeling connected to source, and it's feeling, having people around me that I love and like, and access to clean air and great food and sunshine and, nature and culture. And I mean, to me, it's the simplicity, but also the extraordinary, amazing revelation that we are actually living on the planet Earth, and it evolved, and there are trees and birds and flowers and stuff. I mean, I really have to say that I continue to be in awe.
For me, it's definitely a real combination of, personal fulfillment, the ability to sort of, each day, be interested and engaged in something, and at the same time to, have the time to spend with the people that I love around me. And, that balance it's hard to strike it, but if you can, it is really definitely a good life.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Thank you so much. I thank you both so much for your time and for energy and for what you've created. So I'm Jonathan Fields. We're here at Good Life Project at goodlifeproject.com, and thanks so much, guys, for joining us.